Welcome to On the Bobble Podcast, episode 110. I'm your host, Subasa J. With me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today we're going to be doing our High Seas pre-release primer, and we're also going to ask how Yuki did at Taipei, because you went to Taipei for the, what is it called? The world premiere that was like 3 days ago now.
Yeah, so just got back last night. It was a lot of fun. Hadn't been to Taipei before, so I was there for about a week before that. Got to do some vacationing and trying different food and stuff like that, which was awesome. Taipei is very hot and very humid, which I'm not used to, and I don't miss now that I'm back home. But other than that, it was awesome. Taipei is a very cool place, and if you haven't been, I'd suggest checking it out. For the world premiere, I actually didn't do very well on my world premiere sealeds. I went 2-2, and then the next one I went 2-2, and then I went 3-1, and I was kind of like, I'm not feeling that confident about this set. I played each of the heroes once. I think I ended up 3-1 on Gravy, and I maybe should have been 3-1 on Puffin, but I can't remember. I made some misplay that was not very good. But yeah, I wasn't feeling super confident. And then come the calling itself, I ended up opening a Gravy pool. I think I also arguably could have had a Marlin pool. I had Return Fire, which is the majestic 4-block that when you block with it, you can banish an arrow and then put it into your arsenal face up at the start of your turn. So you get all the when you put an arrow face up effects, and then you give that arrow +3. So it's like a 0 for 7. Still don't know which one was actually better to play, but I went with Gravy because I felt like my pool was really synergistic, and I had a Sea Legs that I had a bunch of ways to discard, which when you discard it, it makes a rum, and that ended up being pretty good for me. I went 7-1 in Sealed. I went 2-1 in drafting Gravy, 3-0 drafting Marlin, which put me into top 8 as second seed, and then I drafted Gravy in top 8, and I ended up losing in quarters to Yap. The game was actually on coverage. I had a few games on coverage, so if you're curious about how my games went, you can see some of them. I think all the games I lost are on coverage, and I win one of them.
So we get to watch you lose a lot of games of Flesh and Blood, at least on coverage.
Yeah. I think I'm like 1-3 on coverage, but then my record for the event overall is like 12-3.
So you get to watch every single game you've lost.
Yeah, I thought I only lost games, and someone's like, no, you had the win in it, and you won your win in it on stream. I'm like, oh, okay, I won one game. Very good.
Yeah, and also you had the feature draft, right, as well?
Yeah, you can watch my feature draft where honestly it's like a small disaster. I'm Gravy, and it turns out that there's a Gravy on either side of me, and it's also a 4 Gravy pod. I end my draft with 2 allies, and I end up cutting one of them because Mori Lefay, the majestic one that puts counters on other allies, is not a very good card when you only have one other ally.
That's fair.
So I just kind of played this like I just played numbers, to be honest. I just like attacked people with cards that do damage.
Okay, and that worked out for you, I guess.
I went 2-1. It was okay.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Is would you say, do you have like a preference, or at least like an idea who you think might be the strongest hero in this set so far? At least so far?
We're talking sealed or draft?
Either or. If you have like a stronger preference on either or.
So I think in sealed, Gravy definitely seemed like the strongest, followed by Marlin, then followed by Puffin last. I think that Puffin kind of needs very specific cards, and if you have the right pool, there definitely were people that did well with Puffin, but she was sort of like both the least popular and the one that converted the worst. Gravy, there was a lot of Gravy at the top tables. I think if you have a good Gravy Bones pool, it is very, very good. You do need a few allies. I don't think you need as many as people think you do, but if you have like 3 or 4 good ones, that's probably enough, as long as you have like some supporting cards around it. And but Gravy is quite hard to play, I'll say. So like the first like the first sealed pool that you play as Gravy might not go well, but I think as you like play more Gravy, his play patterns become more obvious. And then Marlin, I think, is maybe like the default hero in quotation marks. I don't think it's not like an Uzuri where it's just like you should almost always be Uzuri. It's more just that Marlin is really flexible in terms of what cards you put in her, because her hero ability with Treasure Island is just a really good engine. Like you can play the cannon, and then like you have a harpoon, and you buff that harpoon, and then you attack for 6 overpower. Then on hit you get the gold back, so you can make the harpoon again, and like you just kind of like have this really efficient like weapon and endgame loop. Just like having 6 overpower essentially as your weapon that you can just keep using, just means that like, you know, you can play a bunch of arrows. You can play a deck that has like 4 arrows and like 1 pump. Like that's also fine. And you just play like big attacks in her. You can kind of like put anything in her. She's just like a good stuff deck. And I think her ceiling is maybe a little bit lower, but she has a really high floor.
Then what about Scurv? Scurv was like the secret hero of the set. Apparently, you have to open him in draft to be able to play him, or even in sealed, you have to open him, right?
Yeah, he's a rare. He's a pirate thief. There's no thief cards, so you're limited to the pirate and generic pool. But there are a few cards that get bonuses if you're a thief, mostly in the form of like stealing gold, which is pretty powerful, by the way. Like stealing gold from your opponents is really good. Your opponents kind of need gold to use their hero abilities, and if you're able to deny them gold and you have all the gold and you convert that gold into rum, which is basically action points, it's really really strong. So Scurv was actually the hero that converted the best at the calling. There was only 10 people who played him though, or maybe it was 11. I heard some people had Scurv in their pool and just didn't play him. I don't know if that was like a mistake or their pools didn't support it. It's hard to say. I personally never got the chance to play Scurv in any of the events around the world premiere of the calling, but I did draft a Scurv after the calling, pick one, pack one Scurv, and I ended up 3-0ing that draft pod, and he's pretty sweet. He can do a lot of really powerful stuff. So I think that Scurv is a strong deck. He can struggle to have 3 blocks, but he has the best access to go again in the set, and action points are pretty constrained, so that's a very powerful thing to have. And if your generic and pirate pool is deep enough, you should definitely consider Scurv as a real option. His weapon is also just crazy because it's just like an ally that you get to play that attacks for 2 and has 2 life, and it steals a gold when you attack with it. So yeah, at some point you just get like 2 free value, and then they have to kill this thing, or you just like keep getting 2, and you also steal gold from them.
Yeah, yeah. The weapon for Scurv seems like the biggest upside. Do you also have to draft Sticky Fingers, or can you just like is it like a token in
No,
the set?
it's just a token in the set. Yeah, the the weapon is a big upside. I think the ability might actually be even better. You sort of like have this. You have like a few play patterns with it. You can do like make a gold and then next turn use the rum to do go again, because like making the gold taps you and using the rum taps you, so you can kind of like alternate on turn off turn. Or you can, like make a gold, make a rum, make a rum, make a rum, and then be like go again turn, go again turn, go again turn, like multiple turns in a row. So you can kind of do either or depending just how the game's going.
Fair enough. Do you know what the pull rate on Scurv is? Like, do you think it's
I
around
do
like
not.
one per box, or do you think it's gonna be more rare than that?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Fair enough. Only time will tell. If you get the chance to play Scurv at your pre-release, maybe you want to do that. If not, then if you don't open him, you don't even get the choice to play him. So yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see where Scurv ends up in, like, the Nationals is coming up and it's all gonna be high seas draft. So I wonder how powerful it is to open Scurv, or even to maybe even like hedge and draft around Scurv, and hope you open a pack two.
I think it's like a little hard to draft around in my experience. And I've done 4 drafts total, 2 in the calling and then 2 outside of the calling, like 1 practice draft and 1 after the calling. And I saw Scurv in one of those drafts, and I also saw no Scurvs in my, I guess, 4 sealed pools. So You can't like super count on seeing Scurv, but I think if you see Scurv early, um, drafting him is super real. And I think he's pretty strong pick one, pack one because all that he asks you to do is draft generics and pirate cards, which go in all of the decks anyways. So if you somehow end up in a pod that like overvalues the pirates and generic cards and you can't get enough of them, you can still just go a class hero and like you're gonna be fine. You know what I mean? Like there's not really a way to train wreck as Scurv unless you just like refuse to draft. I guess like the biggest thing would be like if you're drafting like bad generic and pirate cards instead of just like premium class cards, and like you might have a problem, but it's pretty avoidable.
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, then enough about the heroes for now. Let's talk about the limited only mechanic for this set. This is going to be important for the pre-release that's going to be happening this weekend. This is going to be 8-pack sealed again, and the macro of the set is very unique and very special. So it's going to be called Treasure Island. This is shared between both players, and it is a landmark. So when you start the game, you have a Treasure Island in play. And what Treasure Island does, or what Treasure Island reads, is the first time a hero is attacked each turn, put a gold counter on this. Whenever you or an ally you control deals damage to an opposing hero, you remove that many gold counters from this, then create gold tokens equal to the number of counters removed this way. What was your experience playing with Treasure Island during the weekend?
Yeah, it kind of evolved over the weekend. I think early on, a lot of people were just kind of like playing their hands as if this wasn't really a thing. And just kind of like trading a gold back and forth each turn. Like if you each take damage every turn, then you'll just trade one gold back and forth every turn. And some games do play like that, especially if the decks are aggressive. But I think that people started to learn that the gold is pretty valuable. And in particular, the first gold is really valuable. Like once your opponent has 3 gold, giving them a 4th gold is like not as important. But the first gold is pretty integral to most of the heroes. Like for Marlin, that means she can draw a card, load an arrow, or make a harpoon. For Puffin, she can get the cog, which gives her like gun go again, or lets her use her cards that like tap cogs for go again or +1. So that's like really important. I think Puffin's actually like the most reliant on gold early. And Gravy can kind of loot. He gets to do a free draw discard, which is one of the better ways to get your allies into graveyards so that you can play them. So that first gold is really important. And I think because of that, if you're able to block Treasure Island, it's often good to do so. And often some of the early turns, because there's limited go again in the set, will look like something like I play my 3 for 7, the other person blocks with like hopefully 2 3 blocks and equipment, or like sometimes they're like, oh, I have a 3 block and a 2 block and 2 equipment, and then they play a 3 for 7 back and they kind of do the same thing, and at some point you run out of equipment, or you have a turn that's just like so good that you have to give it up. And it's really interesting because sometimes what can happen in these games is somebody will like, so if you're both denying Treasure Island, it will start stacking up counters, and sometimes somebody will get like 4 gold or 5 gold from Treasure Island. And yeah, that's always really interesting. That means that they're like at a life deficit, but it also means they have a bunch of gold that they can maybe use later in some of the end games. And just gold is really powerful. You know, if you crack a gold and you draw another blue, you're up a resource, and there's a lot of like late game pitch stack scenarios where you could just like keep drawing cards off of gold and do some really, really powerful stuff. So there's definitely like a bit of a balancing act. I think in general, trying to deny Treasure Island a little bit, especially early, is good. And then just like picking your spots to have a good turn and maybe let them hit in a few spots is also okay.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I think Treasure Island is gonna be like the most important part about this limited format, right? At least
Yeah,
reading,
it's a huge part.
yeah, at least reading the hero abilities on these cards. Some of these basically do nothing if you don't have gold token to start. So
Yeah.
like at least having a way to create gold in limited seems like a good idea.
Yeah, in particular, if you have like efficient ways to create gold, like some of them almost trade like a whole card for a gold, and that's like not so good. But like one of my favorite cards in the set, Golden Tipple. At red, it's a 1 for 3, and then you can discard a card. And if you discard a yellow, you draw a card and make a gold. Um, this card is so sweet. It's especially good. It's not so good in Puffin, but in Gravy, you can discard your allies to it. And the blue one is also a starter. So, like, you've played a blue, you can play an ally out of your graveyard with it. And that's really good. And in Marlin, you can activate. You have to have a gold already, but you can activate Marlin to make a harpoon, then discard the harpoon because it's a yellow. Then you draw a card. So it's just like a 1 for 3 go again, draw a card, and the gold gets replaced, which is really strong. But it also means that if you like are stuck with cards and you don't have a gold, or it's like turn 0, you can make a gold if you have a yellow, which is pretty good.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty sick. I guess there's one other token that's like kind of new to this set. We were talking about it a little bit already. It's called Gold Kiss Rum. Do you want to explain what this exactly does?
Yeah, so this is a token, and it says it's an item that stays on the board, kind of like gold, and it has an instant. You tap your hero to use it, and you destroy the rum. So if your hero is already tapped, you can't use this ability. And it says your next action this turn gets go again, and your hero can't untap this turn unless they're a pirate. All the heroes in this set are a pirate. So basically, you tap your hero, and your next action gets go again. That could be a non-attack action, like an ally, or that could also just be an attack. Um, Rum is really powerful. So, like Scurv, I think Scurv is powerful because of his ability to generate rum. He has a pretty big downside, right? You get no class cards, but the rum really makes up for it. And then for the other heroes, rum is pretty hard to come by. I think it's only on Majestics.
Okay, so it's not really part of the limited format then. I think the one of the only cards I know would be like Sea Legs, which is a generic action attack. It's a 3 for 6, and it says when this is discarded, create a Gold Kiss Rum token.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
sure what other cards actually generate rum in this set so far.
There's also like Tip the Barkeep. It's a blue 3 block that has go again and makes a rum, and you can give your opponent a gold to put it on the bottom of your deck if you want to. But yeah, that card's pretty sweet. So yeah, if you have a way to make rum, it's really strong. Um, but I think only one of my 4 sealed pools was able to make rum. And my
Mm,
Scurv deck could make rum because it was Scurv. But like, you don't come across it that much. But as I mentioned, you're pretty constrained on action points in the format. So if you do have access to rum, it lets you do some really, really powerful stuff, especially in combination with like the high tide mechanic, which is just if you have 2 blues in your pitch zone, you get some kind of bonus. It will tell you what it is.
I see, I see. Oh, yeah, because you get to pitch a blue, play your 3 for 6 with go again, then pitch another blue and play your high tide card.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty insane, pretty insane. I guess you're talking about the go again is important in this set. I guess the main card that comes to mind will be Nimblism, and I see this in your notes here. And you have it down as Nimblism Tribal. What do you mean by Nimblism Tribal?
So Nimblism is reprinted in this set. It comes in all 3 colors. I think red Nimblism in particular is really, really strong in this set because there's a bunch of, like, for one, what we talked about, go again, that lets you convert big hands, which is not always easy. But the other reason is that there's a bunch of cards that care about the card Nimblism. And if you have 1 or especially 2 red Nimblisms, you can start playing these cards and they get really, really good. Um, so those cards are, there's an attack action at common called Nimby. The red one is a 0 for 3 that blocks for 2. Not very impressive. But when it attacks, you can search your deck for a Nimblism, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. This doesn't have go again, so often you'll play a Nimby, then arsenal it. But even if it's a 0 for 3 that draws you a 0 for 3 go again, that's pretty good value as a chain ender. And then if you combine it with some of the equipments that care about Nimblism, it gets even more powerful. So we have the Swift Strike Bracers. This is a generic arms. As an action, you can destroy it, and your next attack gets +2. You can activate it only if you played a Nimblism this turn. So just +2 on an equipment on offense is really, really good. And NIMBY and Swift Strike, Bracer, and Nimblism all work together. There's also Quick Clicks, which is boots. It has an action, destroy this, your next attack this turn gets go again. Activate it only if you play Nimblism this turn, and the action has go again. So notably, if you have enough of these, I've seen terms like Nimblism, Crack the Boots, Gloves, NIMBY for 8, go again, go get a Nimblism, play my Nimblism, some other 0 for 4, go again, another 0 for 4, stuff like that. It gets pretty out of hand.
Okay, yeah, and I guess this is a good way for you to trigger Treasure Island as well, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a great way to like go over the top of your opponent's blocks.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also 2 rares, Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick. They're very similar. I'll just read Jack Be Nimble. 0 for 3, that blocks for 3 at red. And it says, when this attacks, you may banish a Nimblism from your graveyard. If you do, it gets +1 and go again. And then when this hits, steal an item they control until the end of this action phase. You can like steal a gold and crack it, for example. The other one steals an ally and untaps that ally, which is also pretty strong. But the big thing is 0 for 4, go again.
Okay, and it's a 3 block as well.
And it's a 3 block. Yeah. So this is kind of like a package where like if you don't have red Nimblisms in your deck, you really don't want Nimby, and you probably don't want Jack Be Nimble, and you definitely don't want these equipment because they literally don't do anything. But if you start to have all of them together, you start to have something quite strong. So this is something to look out for. I actually think all of the heroes can play the Nimblism package. It fits into Puffin the easiest because a lot of her commons are 1 and 0 cost. So you do need like targets for the Nimblism, so the Nimblism isn't just dead in your deck. But there's lots of generic and pirate that are 1 and 0 costs. So you can. This honestly works in all of the heroes as long as you just have some targets for it.
Does it work on the allies Nimbulism, or is it just an attack?
No, it's attack actions. Or sorry,
Okay,
attack action cards.
Okay, so it can only buff attack action cards.
Yes, yeah. So it doesn't work on your allies, notably. Yeah.
I guess there's no Nimble Strike in this set then, huh?
There's no Nimble Strike, but Jack Be Nimble is similar. 0 for 4, go again instead of a 1 for 5, go again. Same idea.
Yeah, basically the same card, but printed slightly differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The next note you have here is big attacks. Oh, actually, sorry. Before that, the next thing you have here is 3 blocks. Are 3 blocks rare in this set? I haven't actually been able to like go deep into this set and like look at all the block values of this set yet. But you think 3 blocks are important in this set?
Yeah, so it's maybe similar to, in some ways, this set is very heavy hitters-ish, where you play a lot of 3 for 7s. There's just like so many 3 for 7s. That's why the big attacks. And some of them have 3 blocks. It's pretty much just the class cards. There are some pirate cards that block 3, and maybe a few generics that rare. I don't know if there's generic commons that block 3 besides the block card. But yeah, ability to block is really important because there's always an on hit due to Treasure Island. So even though the other cards don't have that many on hits, I think being able to defend and slow down the game is really, really, really important in the set. And again, because you're limited on go again, is even more important. There are some aggressive decks, especially in draft, that might have like a lot of this Nimblism package, and then like maybe they have some other go again attacks like Scar for a Scar, Rabble, Life for a Life, etc. All the go again attacks in this set are quite good. So there are decks that lean that direction, but in general, being able to have 3 blocks, and if you have like the 4 block cards, they're crazy. They're super good. Yeah, being able to block is really, really good in the set, basically.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I really like the point that you said, like, you really want to prevent the Treasure Island from triggering, and 3 blocks is like a great way to make sure it doesn't hit, at least early in the game, right?
Yeah, especially in combination with the equipment, and there is quite a bit of equipment in this set. It kind of feels like hunted, where like usually your hunted pool has a full set of equipment when you're playing sealed, and there's like probably like if you open 8 packs, there's probably more than 8 equipments in your pool, kind of thing.
Okay, so you're not gonna be like restrained on your equipment pool, just like Hunted was.
Yeah. In draft, you need to draft them, and they're really important to have, just like hunted, honestly. But yeah, I would say the equipment in the set feels a lot like the hunted, both in terms of like power level, availability, how important it is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Um, it's a good thing in at least in Seal that we get like a couple extra packs, so then it's like it feels unlucky when you have to play 3 equipment, or at least it's like it'll be like a choice, because you can typically
Mhm.
play one of the 3 heroes and somebody will be able to play 4 equipment. And that just wasn't the case when you only had 6 packs.
Yeah, yeah. I remember even in heavy hitters where you did have 8 packs, but it was like always one equipment per pack. Sometimes you're like, oh no, I opened like 3 gloves and 3 chess pieces, and then like I don't know, a boots a boots and a head, but they like don't go in the same class, so I can just like never get 4 equipment in this pool, and that feels bad. Um, I think I think all of my sealed pools had 4 equipment for all 3 heroes.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know. Does that mean there's a lot of generic or pirate equipment in this set?
Yeah, every class has 2 classed equipment, and then there's also generic and pirate equipment in all the slots. Um,
Oh, okay. So that means
yeah,
there just isn't that many like hero specific equipment then in this set.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, there's still some. I think 2 class equipment for each class is similar. I think it's mostly just that you get like I don't know how many equipment it is per pack, but it might be something around like 1.5 equipment per pack on average. I don't know if that's like actually true. I'm just kind of ballparking, but
That's your like internal what's it called? Average? Not an average. Guesstimate? It's a
yeah, yeah,
guesstimate.
it's a guesstimate. I didn't like sit there and like tabulate how many equipment across how many packs did I open, but that's sort of like roughly what it feels like.
Okay. So blocking is important in this set. And I guess this kind of ties into your next point as well. You said big attacks. Big attacks are important in this set, and why is that? You said, sorry, let me rephrase. The next point here, you say big attacks. What do you mean by big attacks? Like, is there a lot of 3-4-7s in this set?
There is a lot of 3 for 7s and the pirate and generic pool, and I think having a decent density of these is important. It's like to the point that I was not always playing all of my 3 for 7s in my sealed pool because I had to just like cut some to make some space. But you still want to have some density of these because if you don't have go again, then 3 for 7 is kind of the best thing that you can do typically, and just having these big attacks is good. So the 3 for 7s are great. There's like a rare that's a 3 for 6. It's called Crash Down the Gate. It's a 3 for 6, and then when you attack with it, your opponent reveals the top card of their deck. And if that card has less power than this attack, so 6 at red, the attack gets +2. So it's a 3 for 8, and it has on hit destroy the top card. And like that card is like it's like a bomb almost. Like it's crazy. It feels so unfair. Both the 3 for 8 stat line and the destroy the top card, because I don't know if it's a fatigue format, but the games definitely can go to fatigue if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes, that makes sense. But
Um,
man, a 3-4-8 seems unfair though. Like
yeah,
we've seen some 3-4-8s in the past. I think in Rosetta we had the Earth the
Cadaverous
Decompose card.
Tilling.
Yeah, Cadaverous Tilling, and that card was like well above the premium level of common. And I guess this one's a rare, but I'm assuming they're just as powerful as that card.
Yeah, yeah. It might even. Well, I don't want to say it's more powerful Cadaver's Chilling also decomposed, so it's like a little bit hard to compare. But I think the 3 for 8 stat line might feel even more powerful in this set, just because of, I guess, because of Treasure Island. If your opponent has to block with 3 cards, it's like really hard to have a good return. So yeah, it's really good. And then there's also another one of my favorite big attacks, Battalion Bark. It's a boat. It's a 4 for 7 at red, and it has High Tide. It gets +2. So if you pitch 2 blues to play this, it gets +2, and then it's a 4. So then it's like essentially a 4 for 9 at red and 8 at yellow and 7 at blue. Honestly, all of the colors of this card are fantastic. It also blocks 3. It's a pirate card, so it goes in every deck. I would suggest playing every copy of this card that you get because it's extremely, extremely good, especially if you can find a way to use some of the other resources. So one of the easiest ways is to use a gold. You just crack a gold and you get a card that maybe you can arsenal. The other way is if you have some some of the go again attacks, like Life for a Life is a 1 for 4. There's a yellow 1 for 4 that has go again if you have less gold than your opponent. There's another Life for a Life style card that's like a 2 for 4 go again on hit deal a damage, and go again if you have less life on it, and it does on hit deal a damage. And that's like another great way to use that resource. Like basically, if you have to go again attack for 4 into Battalion Bark for 9, it's so good. Like 4 card 13 is so good in this format.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, 4 card 13's been good in almost every limited format we've had so far, and I guess no exception here. That's still good here.
It's still good here, but it's so
Hmm.
good in this format. I don't know. It's like, I think it might be because of Treasure Island that it's so good. I don't know. It's just, yeah, the Battalion Bark just feel like every time you cast it, it's just like, oh, that felt so strong. Sometimes even when your turn is just 3 card 9, you don't do anything else, you're just like, ah, that was still like a pretty good turn.
That's fair though. That's fair though. It seems like a lot of the cards in this set is gonna be blocking for 2. At least the generics are. Or even like Gravy Bones have a lot of like necro allies that doesn't block. So if you can just like force your opponent to block with their whole hand just to prevent your Treasure Island, that seems like a really big plus side.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is like, there definitely are big hand plays that you can do in this format, and they're really, really powerful. But a lot of your default play patterns are just like playing 2 card 7s, and most of those 7s block for 2. So you're like very locked into like block 6, send 7 on a decent number of your hands. And when someone's just like 9, it's like, I don't know, like I can't like block this and do something meaningful, is how I would put it. Um,
That seems fair. That seems fair. Yeah, there isn't that many 0 for 4s in this set, then, is there?
there's not, and honestly, I found the 0 for 4s surprisingly underwhelming. Like there's a 0 for 4 that blocks 3, and you have the option to remove a gold from Treasure Island. And if you're Scurv, it's great because if you're a thief, you also get a gold, and he's like really low on block 3s. But if you're not Scurv, I found this card to be like borderline playable, which is crazy to say because like Wounded Blow is usually just like an auto include in your deck. But I think basically the big hands in this format are strong when your opponent can play them. So you want to be like attacking for 7 to threaten Treasure Island. And if all you're doing is 4 and they can put like a 3 block and a 3 block and equipment in front of it, deny you your Treasure Island, and then keep like potentially a 4 card hand if they have an arsenal, you can be in like pretty big trouble. So I often feel like the turns where I block 3 cards, send a 0 for 4 is like not, it feels like you're falling behind.
I see. It's a losing play pattern.
Yeah, it's also like not good for deck damage reasons as well. So you can do this like a little bit, like you might do this here and there, but it's like if you do this like 3 turns in a row, you're probably not going to win that game. Is kind of what it feels like.
Okay, that makes sense. Then do you want to move on and talk about a little bit more about each of the heroes in depth?
Yeah, we can talk about each of them.
Yeah, so the first one I wanted to talk about, or at least the first year that I had the most questions about, will be the new class, Gravy Bones. He's the first necromancer in this game, and he typically attacks with allies, or actually, he doesn't have a weapon. Instead, he has an offhand equipment. Offhand equipment? Is that how you say it? Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it is an offhand equipment. And it's called Compass of the Sunken Depths. This is a token, and its ability is instant tap it, look at the top card of your deck. The first card with Watery Grave you play from your graveyard each turn gets go again. So you have to play the Watery Grave card from your graveyard for it to get go again. So you can't just play it from your hand, right?
Yeah, and because of this, you basically always want to play your ally from graveyard and then attack with it. I think if you're not playing your ally and attacking with it, it feels pretty bad. Um, the only exception to that is turn zero. Turn zero play an ally is really, really unfair. And for this reason, I saw a lot of people choosing to put Gravy going second. I have not decided what I think about that. Um, I do think that if Gravy goes first and plays an ally, it's like it's like a huge advantage. So maybe that is just a reason to make Gravy always go second. But I also don't think all Gravy decks need to have lots of allies. And especially in draft, I don't necessarily think they all will. Um, so sometimes you just kind of like let Gravy go second. Like as Gravy, it's kind of weird because like I don't know, like all my Gravy decks that I got to play just had like kind of lowish ally counts, and my opponents are just like, I lose the die roll. My opponent's like, you go second. I'm like, I kind of just want to go second anyways.
It's like I don't have allies to play on turn zero, anyways. I want to go second
Yeah,
so I can pressure the treasure island better.
yeah, and then you just like draw your battalion bark and like attack them for 9 and going second an arsenal card, and they're just like, oh no.
I
uh,
guess the first question I have about Graving Bones is how many allies do you think you need in your deck? Like you were saying that people had like a sentiment that they had to play a bunch of allies, but you're thinking like a couple of allies good enough?
I've heard people say the most common number I've heard talking to people is 4 to 7, with most people leaning towards the 5, 6, 7 range as being optimal. Um, I don't. Okay, I haven't gotten to play with the 6 or 7 ally deck, so I'm not gonna comment too much about it. But what I'll say is that my sealed pool had 4 allies, and it felt fine. I don't think I ever resolved more than 2 or 3 of them in any of my games. And a lot of my experience against the 6, 7 ally decks was that they would get a bunch of allies in their graveyard and then they would play 2 to 3 of them. So there's something to be said for like if you have more allies, you find them faster, and there's some cards that care about discarding or destroying the top card of your deck, and if it's a card with Watery Grave it gets a bonus. Like some of them get go again, some of them get +1. The go again ones are quite good, especially if there's an ally on top. So maybe if you have a lot of those go agains, just having more allies on top to have hits to get go again is like, I don't know, maybe that makes you want a higher ally count. But I don't think, like if you open your pool and you're like, oh, I only have 4 allies, I don't think that's a reason to not play Gravy Bones, especially if they're good ones.
Mm.
Um,
And then I guess another question would be, in your opinion, what do you think who the best ally is outside of the majestic ones?
yeah, so I'm gonna list a few of them that I think are excellent. So the first one is Limpet Hop Along. It's a 0 cost ally that attacks for 2 and blocks for 1, and it's costs 1 to attack, and it has go again. So Limpet having go again is really, really powerful, and I think that Limpet is like one of the better allies for sure. It's just really easy to find a spot where you just, you've played a blue somewhere, or you've discarded a blue to Gravy's ability, or you've used, there's like a headpiece that lets you destroy the top card of your deck, and if it's a blue, you turn Gravy's ability on, and you can just play this out, and you basically get like a Zephyr Needle that they have to kill, which is really good. Um, there's also Rigor Mortis. This is a 1 cost ally that attacks for 6 and has 1 life. and it costs 1 resource to attack. The 6 power ally is like super scary. You kind of have to kill this, otherwise they just get to block with 3 cards and swing Rigor Mortis. There's also some chess pieces that make a resource in this format, so they can potentially block all 4 cards, crack their chess piece, swing Rigor Mortis, which is just like kind of brutal.
That you know
Even
what
though it
that
has
sounds
1 life,
like?
it's like so good. What does that
You know
sound
what
like?
that sounds like? That sounds like Mirror Guy a little bit.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah. So Rigor Mortis is great. Suavi is also great. He's a 3 cost, 2 to attack ally, and he has 7 power and 3 life. Um, you might look at Suavi and go, "This is so much worse than Rigor Mortis. Like you get 1 more damage and 2 more life, but he costs like 3 and 2 instead of 1 and 1." The breakpoint's significant, but even more than that, the 3 life is really significant because Marlin's Yellowfin Harpoon attacks for 2, and Puffin's weapons also attack for 2. So they can actually just weapon attack Rigor Mortis and kill it, but Swappy is always a card to clear. So I think Swappy, especially like in an endgame situation, is just like, you do some like go again attack into like a Swabby, it's just like, oh man, like now I have to like spend a card to clear the Swabby. Like it's really, really good. So I think three
Okay.
life is like an important breakpoint, basically.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I guess like those three are like the premium, at least at common and rare, the ones that you're looking for. Do you think there are any like
Yeah.
bad allies in the set, like the ones you just like don't want to include if possible?
Um I guess the other one I'll say that is like also pretty premium is Chowder. It's 3 costs, 3 life, 3 attack. Attacking is free, and it also has instant tap to gain a life. Um, Chowder's just really flexible. The 3 cost is expensive, but the fact that he attacks for free and can also gain a life for free as an instant is really strong. And this also means that like if you play him and then attack with him for 3, then they have to spend at least 3 damage to clear him, and then you can still gain a life because you untap at the end of your turn. It's like it's just really, yeah. Chowder's been really impressive. I'd say that I won't read them, but Cuddy the Shark is, I'd say, like a decent ally. Some people like him a lot. I think he's okay. Barnacle is also okay. You can play them; they're not bad. And then Shelly, I think I've heard people say Shelly is like their least favorite. Um, haven't had too much of a chance to play with Shelly, but it doesn't. I think it's just expensive. Like it's 2 costs, 3 to attack for 4, which is not great, and its ability to like make your action cards block for 1 more is like really strong, and it does have a lot of life. But like the turn you play it, you're not pressuring that much, I guess is the problem. Whereas like a lot of these allies, you kind of like get to hit them really hard. I think the best ones are the ones that let you just like hit them really hard.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I guess like Shelly being able to make your cards block for 1 more doesn't really help because you can't block for Shelly.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing is just like I mentioned, you want to play your ally and attack with it on the same turn, and like playing your like spending 5 resources to play your Shelly and attack for 4 is just like sometimes not good enough. Like especially if they're like let's say it's late in the game. Um, Attacking for 4 can be like pretty low impact. Your opponent can sometimes just be like, okay, you attack for 4, whatever. Like I don't really have to block that. Whereas like if you attack for like 6 or 7, they kind of have to respect that. Or
Yeah.
like Chowder attacks for 3 and then he starts gaining you a life every turn, so they just is like a must answer threat. Otherwise, you just sit there, gain life, gain life, gain life. Um, and just only 3 to play is so much different than like 2 and then 3 to attack. Is like the 5 is just it's so much.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess we can move on for now and talk about the next hero. Let's talk about Puffin. So what Puffin does is it taps, destroys a gold you control to create a golden cog token, and it also says the second time you crank each turn, you get to draw a card. What does a golden cog token do again?
It's just an item that enters with 1 Steam counter and you can crank it.
Okay, so all it does is crank itself and nothing else.
Yep. But
Okay.
Puffin has a whole bunch of cards that the most common effects are either you can tap a golden cog to give it +1, or you can tap a golden cog to give it go again. Some can do both. Some can only do one mode. And then a few of the, I think they're all rares, have on hit effects where if you hit, you can tap a golden cog to have some kind of effect. Um, I want to shout out one card that's like really deceptive in Puffin that I got by pretty hard. Um, so there's Cogwork Zeppelin. This is a rare. I think it's just like a very good reason to be Puffin. It's a 2 for 6 that blocks 3. It says when this hits a hero, you may tap a cog you control. If you do, create a golden cog token, and it has a twice per turn instant to tap a cog you control and get +1. Cogwork Zeppelin is a crazy card, especially if you have multiple cogs. What is so scary about this card is the on hit is actually go again, because you tap the cog, you make a golden cog, then you crank that cog so you get an action point back. And then because you made a cog and you hit them, you can use Puffin to make a cog and crank it, and then you draw a card. So Cogwork Zeppelin is essentially like go again, draw a card on hit. If you have a cog to tap, which is not what the card says. And I just wanted to mention it because, like, yeah, I got pretty hard by this card. It turned out it was like I couldn't have blocked. I think they were attacking for like 10, and they're threatening to pump it up to like 12, and I just couldn't actually block 12 with my hand anyways. So like, I didn't feel too bad about it. But they did that, and I was just like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean you draw a card and get go again? Like, this is not what I signed up for.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds really good. And I guess it also just has the stat line of it being like a 2 for 8 if you have 2 untapped cogs.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, that's kind of what Puffin's trying to do. I would say the most common weapon for Puffin is the Blunderbuss. It's the 2 cost weapon that attacks for 2, and then you can also tap a cog to give it go again. You have to do the tap a cog before you use the Blunderbuss, so your opponent knows if it's go again or not. This is a weapon I saw people use most commonly. I'm sort of curious if the free weapon has a space too, because the other one is like basically you tap a cog to give it +2, or sorry, to attack for 2, but it costs 0 resources, and you can also tap an additional cog to make it like a 0 for 3 that costs 0 resources. I'm curious if it has a
Oh,
place, but I think the other one's like easier to use.
okay. Yeah, I just realized I read Spitfire wrong the first time I read it. Spitfire is the other weapon. It says action, tap it, this, and a cog you control. So
Yes.
if you don't have a cog, you don't get to attack with this card.
Yes. So I think if you have like a lot of cog generation and a lot of go again, you can think about using Spitfire, and it is just more efficient. But Cogworks Blunderbuss is just so much easier to use because you just can pay 2 to attack with it.
Mm. Do you know what I just noticed? That this is the first time I'm like deeply looking into all the spoilers right now. There is no boost on any of these cards.
Yes, there's no boost, and most of the go again is gated by you having a cog. Um, so what this means is that Puffin is really, really, really reliant on being able to make golden cogs. So Puffin, that means Puffin really wants gold. And if you can deny Puffin gold, it can be very hard for her to get going. And she also likes cards that make cogs. So there's like Cogworks Turbine that creates a golden cog and gives your next mech attack +3. That card's like really, really key in all the pitches, because if you are denied gold, you can, make a cog and do some other stuff. Also, because it makes a cog, it can draw you a card if you have multiple. So any of the things that make a cog are really good because they either get you online or they threaten to allow you to draw a card. There's also like galvanize, and when you block with it, you galvanize and you get a golden cog, and those are pretty good because you can basically like you have a cog from like a Goldwing turbine, and then it's going to be destroyed on the next turn. You block, you galvanize your cog, it comes back into play with a counter, and then you have a cog for your next turn, so you can give your stuff go again, and that's just like really integral. It's also one of the ways to get to like multiple cogs, which can be important for some of the rares. So I think that like if you're playing Puffin, what you really want is lots of cards that make cogs. And that's kind of like the biggest key. And then aside from that, the pumps with the big mech attacks are good. So like the 2 for 6 stat line with the 1 for 4 pumps is really good, because if you do like a 3 card 10, that's really hard for your opponent to block out and deny you gold. And if they do, like you're probably getting head on deck damage. So if you're able to do like a couple 3 card 10s where you're like threatening to get gold, that's like another way to get online when you don't have the initial gold. Usually once you have the gold and you have the go again, you can keep getting the gold. But when you don't have your first gold, if like all you can do is play a 0 for 4 or a 1 for 5, it's like kind of miserable.
I guess a question would be like, are there any cards that generate gold without having to hit in the set? At like generic or a pirate?
There are, but most of them cost you a card.
Mm.
And the ones that don't, the ones that draw a card, specifically require you to discard a yellow, which is a lot less useful in Puffin because you don't necessarily have like easy access to yellow. Like Marlin has the Goldfin Harpoon, you can destroy a gold to make it, and that's a yellow that you can discard pretty freely, and then you draw a card, get a gold. That's great. Gravy wants to discard his allies, also really great. Puffin, you probably have some yellows in your deck because you're playing limited, but like it's just like not that good.
It's
Does
not
that make
free.
sense? Like it's not free. Like in Gravy, you're like getting an ally in your yard plus all the other stuff, and then Puffin is and Marlin's just like you're just cracking a gold to turn it into like a card, which is crazy. But yeah, and there are other cards that like make gold, but they usually like cost you an entire card. So
Okay, so like your
yeah,
main way of making gold with Puffin in this set will be from Treasure Island, and if
yes,
you can't, it's kind of rough, is what it feels like.
yes, yeah. So you can play some 3 for 7s, you can play the 1 for 4s with the 2 for 6s, and I think those are your best ways to get gold, or just cards that make cogs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then let's move on to the last hero. You said this is gonna be like one of the most universal heroes, Marilyn. Um,
Yep.
and we already talked about you can make a goldfin harpoon by destroying a gold with Marilyn's ability. But the biggest question I have is, which is the better weapon for Marlin?
Um, they're both good. I think the default weapon for most Maryland decks will be Hammerhead Harpoon Cannon. Um, this is the one that is an action that costs 4. You tap it. Your next arrow this turn gets +4, and if it has Harpoon in its name, it gets Overpower. Notably, this bow doesn't load the card into your arsenal, which is very significant and means that Marlin needs to be really careful about how she chooses to arsenal. So often you'll like arsenal an arrow and then attack with it. Or if you have a gold, you can kind of rely on spending 2 to crack the gold and use the gold to reload an arrow with her ability. But if you're playing the Hammerhead Harpoon, you do need to be very mindful of the fact that it doesn't load.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I was worried about that part. Like, typically the bows in this game are the ways that you load your attacks because arrows can't be played unless it's from the arsenal. So do you think there is like an upper limit to how many arrows you can play in your deck in this in Marlin?
Honestly, when I'm playing the Hammerhead Harpoon, I'm playing pretty low arrow count, like often like 3 to 5 red and yellow arrow range. You might be able to play 6. There is a common that's pretty important. It's called, what is it called? It's called Call in the Big Guns. It's a 0 for 3 that says you may put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal. If you have more Call in the Big Guns, you can play more arrows. You kind of want those in balance because if you have Call in the Big Guns but you don't have very many arrows, it's like also not very good. But those kind of work together. But you can also just play a Marlin deck with very few arrows and just mostly big attacks, and then you rely on her hero ability to make the Goldfin harpoons. And the reason Hammerhead is so good is because with Treasure Island, you just have this really efficient engine. There's basically two ways you can play it. One way is you can just make a Goldfin harpoon and at the end of your turn arsenal it. And then if you pitch two cards for 4 resources, you can give that Goldfin harpoon +4 and overpower, attack for 6, and you're probably going to get a gold back because it has overpower. And you basically have like a 2-card 6 that takes no cards out of deck. And before you attack with a Goldfin harpoon, you can even crack a gold and arsenal another Goldfin harpoon and kind of like loop that. So you basically just have this, like, once you have some gold, you just have a 2-card 6 overpower. And then kind of the next step with this is that if you have 2 gold, you can crack a gold, use Marlin's ability, get the Goldfin harpoon, pay 2 to crack a gold, draw a card, load the Goldfin harpoon, spend 4 resources, so that's off with 2 blues, and shoot the Goldfin harpoon, and then you have a extra card that you can arsenal. So both of these play patterns are useful. I think that you can't really sit there and do this the whole game. It's not really good enough, but it's a really strong end game and is very good at closing out the game because of the overpower. And if you can combine some buffs with this, you can kind of kill people from, I don't know, like you combine a +3 with this and you have like 9 overpower. Like that's pretty good at closing out a game of limited.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a time you would think Red Spine Manta might be better?
Yeah, so Red Spine Manta is good. I haven't personally gotten to play with it, but I've seen some decks that utilize it very well. I would say one of the key cards for Red Spine Manta is Swift Shot. This is a 0 for 4 arrow that says when this is put face up into your arsenal, it gets go again this turn. Yeah, just being able to tap Red Spine Manta, load this, you have a 0 for 4 go again. That's really good. Having some buffs, especially the one that load, is good. So you can do like Red Spine Manta, Swift Shot for 7, call in the big guns for +3, load, I don't know, like Dry Powder Shot. It's a 0 for 3 that gets +2 if you put it face up into your arsenal. So then you come in for 8 afterwards. Stuff like that is really strong, but I think you're really looking for some ways to reload the Swift Shots, and then if you have go again attacks, those are also good. Sikkim Shot is good in this deck as well, the 1 for 4 go again arrow. It's probably less good than Swift Shot, but it's still
Okay,
still
that's
good.
interesting. Do you think like the way that you talked about these decks, it does kind of sound like two different decks. At least at draft,
Yeah.
do you think like people are gonna be drafting like the Harpoon Cannon deck, and the other person's gonna be drafting like a Red Spine Manta deck?
Yeah, I think that's pretty likely. You definitely want to be drafting one or the other. I do think they are different. Yeah, the Red Spine Manta deck wants more arrows. It also works really well with like Rabble and stuff like that. So you can go like, I don't know, Ravenous Rabble, then load an arrow and shoot your arrow. You basically want access to go again with Red Spine Manta, and with the Harpoon, it's less important because you just have this like 4 for 4 go again, which is like not super efficient, but it is a strong weapon. It does give you a strong end game. It gives you some evasion, and it's just like a really strong baseline. So I think both decks are honestly really, really good. But the Manta deck, I think, is more specific. You need the support for it, whereas the Harpoon deck is like, because of Treasure Island, you could kind of just play a deck that blocks well and has big attacks and nothing else, and it would function. I'm not saying it's like the best version of that deck, but it would be like playable and has a game plan and has like a very strong end game just because of the Yellowfin Harpoon loop.
Yeah, I guess this is like more for like limited because like you get to abuse the Treasure Island, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, Marlin's honestly been pretty impressive. I think she can do some pretty powerful stuff. And I would say that Marlin and Gravy are kind of the decks that end up cracking gold more. Like they're more resource rich. Um, Whereas like, and they kind of want to play towards these end games where like maybe you have your pitch stack, you crack a bunch of gold, you get a bunch of resources, you play a couple pumps, and you have a big dominated arrow, and you just like close out the game with Marlin. Or with Gravy, you have some kind of setup with. I guess in both of these decks, you can have a setup with Swiftwater Sloop, which is a 2 for 6 that blocks 2 at red, and it has High Tide Go Again. So if you have 2 blues in your pitch zone, you have Go Again. So there can often be like crack a bunch of goals. You play this 2 for 6 Go Again, which is really strong, and then you play like 1 or 2 other attacks, and that can be like a way to close out the game. So I would say like a lot of Gravy and Marlin endgames look like this, whereas Puffin is a lot of like most of your turns you're using Puffin's hero ability to make a cog, and then because of that you're like not you don't usually wind up with this like surplus of gold that you can crack at the end of the game. You're more just kind of like using your gold as you get it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I think that was pretty good, at least for like a pre-release primer. Was there any other cards that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up the episode?
I guess since we're on the topic of Marlin, the headpiece patch the hole is deceptively good. Like the gloves are obviously good; they load an arrow, but patch the hole is like a card that I think reads poorly but is actually strong. Patch the hole doesn't block; it's a ranger equipment head. It says instant destroy this, return a card from your arsenal to your hand. That's it.
Wow, that reads really bad.
Yeah, this card ends up being quite good for a variety of reasons. One is that your arsenal is really contested, and sometimes just being able to unbrick your arsenal is actually huge because you can like crack a gold, draw a card, load an arrow. What this also means is that you can essentially like ponder cards. So I mentioned like the Goldfin Harpoon line where you make a harpoon, you crack a gold, you put it in the Yellowfin Harpoon, you activate your cannon, you attack for 6 overpower, and you have this extra card. But there's no guarantee that that extra card is a good card. You could draw like a block card, which is unarsenable. You could draw a blue that doesn't really do anything. And Patch the Hole basically just lets you take that line, and if the cards are red, you can just keep it in your arsenal and play it. But if you draw something that's not good in your arsenal, you can still arsenal it, then have access to it. So it basically just like lets you free roll play patterns where you would arsenal a random card. And sometimes you don't even have to use Patch the Hole, but it lets you take those lines without being like in danger of just bricking. Another good one is you crack a gold, load a headshot, shoot headshot for 6 as like a 2-card 6 draw card, which is really efficient. But there's like a lot of cards that you don't want to arsenal is basically the problem, and Patch the Hole just basically lets you do that for free. It's like, oh, I got this crappy blue arrow, I'll just stick it in my arsenal, and then next turn I can patch the hole and have an extra card in my hand that's a blue that I can pitch. Or, oh, I drew my 4 block, I can't put this in my arsenal. Well, actually I can put in an arsenal with Patch the Hole and then just draw a 4 block on my next turn, and then I just have a 5-card hand that has a 4 block in it.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess there was a lot more influx of block cards in this set as well than before.
Yeah, there's a decent amount. There's no D reacts and there's no attack reacts, which is kind of a nice change coming from the Hunted. I guess there is a D react at Majestic for Necro, but yeah, in general, there's no attack reacts and D reacts. But there are some block cards in the set that are relevant. Yeah, it's hard to shout out other specific cards. What I would say is the more I play this set, the more it feels like most of the cards have some interesting use cases, and figuring out how to use them is important. I think this set is extremely, extremely deep. It feels like the only other set that I think is comparable to it in complexity is Bright Lights. It feels like a Bright Lights in terms of complexity, and I think that it may actually be more complicated than Bright Lights in the sense that you have 3 different heroes, and then you also have a draftable hero rather than just like all mechanologists. You do have like a very deep generic and pirate card pool, so that kind of ties it all together. But the heroes are quite varied in their playstyles, and there's just like a lot going on. There's a lot of small interactions. There's different builds and different weapons for each of the heroes, and I think that the decks can look pretty drastically different. I also think that the end games with gold and pitch stack is there's just like so much that you can do there. I felt like, even after all the world premiere and calling and everything, I feel like there's still so much I'm learning every game. So yeah, I think that if you're somebody that likes complexity and likes sets that you can really sink your teeth into, you're going to like this set. And the other nice thing about this set is, unlike Bright Lights, like I think Bright Lights had the problem of being complex and being kind of miserable if you're like in your first few drafts. I think this set is just fun right away because it kind of has the default mode of being like heavy hitters ish, where you like throw big attacks, manage Treasure Island. It can be kind of fatiguey. It's just sort of like it has this like Fab Fundies kind of gameplay to it. And then there's just like random like pop off turns involving like gold and synergies and other stuff that can happen somewhere in the middle, almost like Mistveil esque. But I think the combination of the two means that there's like a lot of appeal for honestly all kinds of players, and it's like fun from the get go, but there's a lot to learn if you really want to master it.
That sounds great, honestly. I guess the only bad thing would be that there's not that much time to prepare for events because I think next weekend, I guess, or this weekend is the pre-release. The next weekend after that is the release weekend, which is U.S. Nationals. Are you planning to go? Are you planning on going down for the calling for U.S. Nationals?
Yes, I definitely will be, and I'm honestly just super excited to play more limited of this set. I think it's early. My current gut feeling is that this is going to be my favorite Fab limited set. I'm not calling it for sure just yet because I haven't played enough games. But if a month from now this is my favorite set, I would not be surprised. In fact, I would. That would be my guess. Is that will be the case. I think that this set is just awesome. It's so good. I really like it so far.
Sounds great. That sounds great. I'm excited to try this set. I think the first pre-release, at least in our area, is going to be on a Friday night. I think so. We will see if we can play it or not. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess we can just wrap up the episode here, and we'll be back next week with more High Seas content.
Yep. Yeah, looking forward to do all the how to draft guides and try to get people up to speed for nationals. We may or may not cover all the heroes by the time we get around to your nationals, as nationals comes up very, very fast this time, but we'll do our best. If you have thoughts about the hero that you would like to hear about, feel free to message us. We may or may not listen, especially since there might be multiple requests for different heroes. But yeah, if there is like overwhelming community feedback about, we really want Gravy or Puffin or whoever, we can definitely look to push that up and do that one earlier. And if you do want to message us like that and get in touch with us, you can find us on social media. I'm at Yukili Bender over on Twitter, and Jay is at Ueda J. You can also find me on Blue Sky with the same tag, at Yukili Bender. You can get in touch with us via email on thebobble@gmail.com, or you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/onthebobble, and we have the On the Bobble Discord for all of our patrons, as well as some additional content for some of our higher tier patrons. You can kind of expect to see some High Seas draft stuff coming up. It's probably going to be the next thing I work on, as like a mini draft guide for early format, hopefully cover you for nationals, and then probably some Marlin content as well, as I'm pretty excited about a new ranger.
Perfect. Okay, then I guess we'll just wrap it up here. Thanks for
Yeah,
listening, guys.
thanks for listening. Have fun at pre-release.